Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to episode number 31 of the P.W.P sessions. That's the Poets with Purpose sessions. I'm your host, Mwikali Figueroa, aka the Poet, aka the Anointed Pen. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. On this episode, I am honored and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to interview yet another awesome poet that I have encountered through my poetic travels or experiences or what have you. I believe my first encounter with her was at the Patterson Poetry Festival by the name of Mwikali Words. And before we dive into the conversation, I'm just going to share my screen and give a brief introduction. Okay, as I mentioned, this is episode 31. And for those of you that are not familiar with this podcast, the P.W.P sessions is an extension of the Poets with Purpose Poetry Workshop. And it's a forum that I created where I interview new or established authors of poetry. And I feature a performance of their work along with a Q&A session at the end of the podcast. I'm your host, Mwikali Figueroa, aka the Poet, aka the Anointed Pen. I am a poet, author, blogger, workshop facilitator, and event host, and I am the creator of the P.W.P sessions. Now, tonight's guest is Mwikali Words, and this is her bio. Mwikali Words, author of Love, Discovery, Recovery, and Relapse, is a poet, creative consultant, writing coach, and the CEO of the Kylie Mae Collection, a collection of custom jewelry and affirmation apparel. Born and raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey, Miss Words has graced the stages of several events as a featured poet, including but not limited to the Patterson Poetry Festival, Lincoln Park Music Festival, Virtual Global Soul Poetry Night, Live, and a Juneteenth celebration, reviving the Black experience through the visual and performing arts, live from Newark Symphony Hall. Through poetry and the overall creative expression, Miss Words believes we can find more of ourselves and perhaps be more intentional about who that self is and how that self shows up in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, I now introduce Miss Mwikali Words. Hey, Mwikali, good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Noel? It is a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for being my guest tonight. I'm glad to have
Absolutely.
you to have this conversation. Excited to have this conversation with you. So
Yes.
I'm going to start off with a basic question that I ask all my guests. Who is Mwikali Words? How would you describe yourself or define yourself?
I would say that Mwikali Birds is a bird-like being, um, a chaser of dreams, an advocate of freedom, um, a poet, a jeweler, an all-around creative, a dreamer, imagination-driven soul, um, a mother, an educator eternally, more in an informal way at this point in my life, but yet and still definitely an educator. Um, yeah, I'm an artist and I am striving to be an art that frees others the way I wish to be free. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. That's what's up. When would you say you got you started in poetry? Like, what was your deciding factor or motivation to get started with poetry? How did you begin?
So it started as an assignment. I was in, I want to say sixth grade, uh, fifth or sixth grade. And we had an assignment to do a poem. And I was like, okay, well, does it have to be about a specific thing? And she was like, no, it could be about anything. And it didn't have to rhyme and there were no rules. And I was like, oh, I like that. So I went home and I did that assignment. And when I came back in and shared the poem, the response that I received made me feel a part of something different. You know, it made me feel like I had done something that evoked an emotion that wasn't there before I read it, you know? So it's like bringing something into existence. And that felt good. And so I kept writing, and in writing then also just became a part of the way that I process, you know, like I would journal and all of that. And a lot of times my journals would turn into poems because I wanted to have a way to say what I wanted to say, while also having, I guess, the privacy afforded to you by a metaphor. You know what I mean? Where like it's not saying it straight out forward, but I could say it. And if I couldn't say it to anybody else, I could say it here, you know, in the space of poetry. So yeah, that's how the journey really began for me.
Right. And
Yeah.
what did you first start writing about? Like, what were the subjects that you started to touch on?
I'm an observer. Um, I like to observe things around me. So from a young person, I was always like looking at whatever was around and trying to make meaning of it. You know, like what does that mean? What am I wowed by? What's the story? You know, so I would find myself riding the bus or on a train and I'd be writing about like what I saw around me, or you know when Hurricane Sandy happened and all of that, and people were sitting in Dunkin' Donuts trying to charge their phones because electricity was out in some places, and I would just write of like what I saw, what I thought the story was, where love lived, or where maybe injustice may have been evoked a response, you know. And not always having um, the words to say it in any other way but through poetry, because it helped transform it, you know, whether it was like, this is too painful to just talk about in prose, so I got to make it a poem. You know, it's like, it's almost similar to that line, like, got to make the song cry. Like, you know, this idea that rather than me having to hold it, you know, I can put it on the page, or I can see things around me and wonder about like people other than myself. You know, what is your life like? You know, how do I understand the world better by understanding the people around me, you know, in observation? So a lot of my poetry was about what I saw, nature, um, relationships, and just, you know, life experiences. And I think a lot of it too, just anything that evoked a strong enough emotion to want to understand it better the writing of poetry helped me to process. So yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. That's what's up. Now, who or what would you give credit to helping you develop your skills as a poet and an author?
That's a good question. Who or what would I attribute that to? I would say part of it was in reading, you know. Um, Interestingly, uh, growing up, I was raised very much in the church and that sort of thing. So the like metaphor and kind of very poetic language of the Bible was also kind of influential in the way that I wrote, because that's what I heard, thou and thus, and so a lot of my poetry speaks to metaphors from those spaces and may exude like the gospel music sound, of like the repetition that you would hear there, or the way that I read also may like sometimes sound that way, right? Like the way that I read may evoke a sermon-esque tilt. And I think that's like something you see also in music, where musicians who grew up in the church may have a soulful bent that shows and mirrors some of all of that, right? Um, I read a lot of Nikki Giovanni, Haki Matabuti, even readings that weren't necessarily poetry, like The Prophet, by Khalil Gibran, The Alchemist, you know what I mean? Like all
Right.
of the things around me, music heavily influences a lot of my writing as well. I'll listen to a song, and as I'm listening, I'll start writing, and it'll be influenced by maybe a line or the feeling of the song, or, like the image that song evokes or the sound evokes, because sometimes there aren't any lyrics, you know what I mean? But
Right.
it still creates a feeling and emotion. So yeah, like I would say life, I would attribute life to what my poetry looks like, because everything that I see, everything that I process has to go through my poetry,
Right.
and so it's like my poetry breathes my life, you know what I mean? And vice versa. My life breathes the poetry. It can't help it. So
Right. Right. That's
yeah,
what's up. Which
yeah,
leads me to now want to touch on your book.
yeah,
Your book, Love, Discovery, Recovery, and Relapse.
yes.
Now, what was the motivation or inspiration to put together this book? And do you consider this project to be self-published?
Yes. So I had poems everywhere. And at the point that I decided I was going to publish, my life had shifted. And so I was in a space where I was readjusting to some major life changes. And I was like, if you just keep writing and writing and writing and writing, and then one day there's another shift of some sort and you don't get to ever put it out there, or you're never able to say that you put out this book that you just keep talking about and talking about and talking about, like, could you forgive yourself, like for not doing it, And I was
Right.
like, I don't think I can. It got to a point where it was just like, I wanted it so badly that my reason for moving safely in the world had more to do with needing to survive long enough to publish. That's it. Like nothing else was as important at a point as like getting this poetry out. So I had, poetry everywhere and pages, napkins, receipts. And so it
Right.
was a process of like the poems already lived out here in the space, but I had to now make sense of it, like what are the poems saying? What is the story? So I was reading through these poems and trying to assess like what is the point of the poems. And in that process, I found that it was really this kind of ebb and flow and cycle of like discovering love in various varieties, not just romantic love, but all of the ways that love can live, right? um I was exploring that in a section, and then I felt there was a point at which it was like I felt wounded by the love that I experienced, and so I was just like, love being almost like a drug. It's like discovering it and then being in this space of recovery now, because now I'm like, yo, wait, love is painful. Hold on. And it's not that love is pain, it's the relationship, right? Because love itself is a pure thing.
Right.
That's what I believe. I believe love itself is a pure thing when unadulterated by all of our mess and all of our attempts at making it look like love rather
Right.
than just loving. Right. um and so it was that idea really of just like experiencing those ups and downs in relationships and understandings of even the self, of like falling in and out of love with self and what that can look like. So it really was a journey in that way, and so I organized it that way. I had some photographs that I had taken of different components of the house or something, different things, and I put that in the book as well because I wanted there to be a visual element. I wanted it to speak to my love of photography. Like, I don't have a professional bent in photography, but I definitely have a love of any ways that I can express creativity, and so that allowing that to live on the pages as well, and allowing it to also be a space where I honored poets that I admired, or still admire, right?
Right.
Like Sonny Patterson, and Saul Williams, like, these poets who are just, I heard them and was just like, how are you this brilliant? And they spoke to the soul in such powerful ways. And I wanted to be that powerful, and I wanted to be that, I guess, layered in what I could say to someone to maybe make them believe in something, or dream again, or, understand that I see you where you are because I was there, or I was somewhere similar, because that's what we look for in each
Right.
other, I think, is just like, help me see myself so I can understand the world. I can understand you. We can all cooperate a little bit better,
Right.
um, yeah, yeah.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And what was that feeling like when you got that delivery and you opened that box and you finally got your hands on that finished book? What was that feeling for
It
you
was
like?
it was so great. You see, I'm so excited to tell you about it. Like, that's how it was. It was like, oh, and what was funny? I remembered that the box came in, right? And I was at my parents' place and I was in the dining room. Um, and then I heard somebody say, you have a package. And I was like, could it be here? Because I had sent it there because I was like, I don't want to send it where I am because I don't know, sometimes the mail didn't come.
Right.
But so I'm opening the box and there's all this paper. And I remember thinking, what if there are no books? What if it's just a lot of paper? Like, what if I've been duped, right?
Right.
But clearly it was heavier than just a bunch of paper, and it felt amazing to feel it in my hand. To, I grew up loving reading, loving books, loving the smell of a book, loving being in a library, like in love with those spaces and those opportunities to just like curl up somewhere sneaking a late night read, like that, so being able to hold one and say, that's mine, that I did this thing that other people did, that I loved to take part in, and now I'm the author, that like I can't even, I don't know. It was important to me because it was a fulfillment of a promise, when I first decided to write the book. Actually, part of that story was I was a teacher at the time as well, and there was an event happening, and I was called into the library, and they were like, you can bring your students in. I was like, okay, great. And they sat in on an HBCU panel, and they didn't know at the time that or didn't realize, I don't know, that I graduated from Spelman. So they're like, I didn't know you graduated from Spelman. You should be on this panel too and talk about your experience about, going to an HBCU. And so all of the panelists were introducing themselves. They're like, I'm so and so, and I'm the author of this, or I'm in this, they had their different things and how they were describing themselves. And when it got to me and introducing myself, I introduced myself as a teacher, and that this was my class sitting in the audience, this 11th grade class. And, and I said, and I'm a teacher and a soon to be author. And it was like, and then my students like, yeah, miss, tell them who you are. And it was like, in that moment, it was like, I was accountable to them. You know what I mean? It was like, now it was beyond me. It wasn't just my like secret constant wish. It wasn't just the thing I talked about in conversation with my friends who already knew me. It was a declaration out to people who were expecting to now see that happen, because they took pride in the possibility of their teacher being this author, because they knew my poetry, and because we would have poetry in class. I was like, all right, we're having a poetry day. And they'd be like, yes, okay, yes, I know what poem I'm sharing. We would have open mic sometimes. And so they'd be like, okay, miss, it's your turn. We're not gonna, we take turns here. We're not doing this. I'm like, okay. And they're like, wait, and so that experience, it was like, to feel that of creating belief in a possibility beyond this moment, that you can be this multi-layered person. You're not just the teacher, you're also the author, the poet, the jeweler, the like all of the things that you are, you're allowed to be. And it was important to me to inspire that for them, because there was, you get these stories of like all of the things people will tell them that they're not, because of the things they haven't yet achieved, or haven't yet quite mastered. And so it's like, you don't listen, or you don't do this, you don't do that. And I was like, I want to infuse them with what you are, what you can be inspired, like, and so then it was like, now you have to do it. And so seeing it in my hand, it was like, I get to show them now, that like, I really did it. The thing that I said, it's here now. Yeah.
Right. And that's excellent. And I think that's the goal of every poet or author, to be able to have that level of transparency and to show what's possible with words. It's a beautiful thing to experience and to have other people experience. Now,
Absolutely.
when you were deciding to put the book out, did you consider going the traditional publishing route, or did you already make up in your mind to want to self-publish? Like, how did you make that decision?
I was too impatient to wait for anybody else's process or rules, or like, you know what I mean? I think I was in a space of like, I want to see my book in my hand. I'm going to make it happen by myself, and I think like growing up, I wasn't an only child, but I was only child for a good amount of time before my sisters came around. And so that kind of like sentiment of, you do this by yourself, like, this is mine, I'm gonna, I reached out for help to people to be like, hey, any suggestions on places I should reach out to for self-publishing, and that sort of thing. But after that, it was just like, I want to have as much control of this as possible, because I just need it in my hands. I need to make it to that point where it's in my hands. It became really important to me. And so it was like, there will be no waiting now, because I've already been waiting. I've been sitting on these poems for 8 years, so like, what are we doing? So yeah, it got to that point where it's just like, I don't have time to wait on people and their, suggestions of what should change, But I did go through people to read my poetry as well. So that was helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can relate to that, because every either choice has its positives and negatives, but I can attest to that same thought, that you want to do something for yourself and not have to deal with any red tape or politics or processes, when it's something that you're passionate about and you want to see in your hands immediately. So And I think
Mhm.
it's there's a level of benefit to it where you say you can did some where you can say you know created something on your own. You know,
Right,
there's a level of
right,
satisfaction to that that's unique to you know the traditional way. Not that there's anything wrong with the traditional way, but you know
right.
there's something about being able to say you created something on your own, you know, independent of that
Yeah.
process, that brings a certain level of satisfaction that I can totally relate to.
Absolutely. It's very gratifying um to just know that your hands were fully fruitful. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Your phalanges were going at it. Like
Right.
you did all the things. You typed, you took the pictures, you picked the designs, you allowed yourself to fully immerse in the process of what it was to create the thing,
Right.
so that it was like if I ever wanted to do it again, I don't have to, wonder if it's possible. I can say I just did it. And so
Right.
I'm definitely open to in future projects. I think I'm open to either way. I think I just perhaps need to do um, a bit more deep diving into the other way of doing it. However, yeah, I'm just very like, I have the poems. Let's get the book.
Right.
It's time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Now, for those not already familiar with your poetry or your book, can you share what subjects you chose to talk about in your book?
Yes. So it is definitely a blend, I would say, of um, poems that's like, hey, this is my first understandings of love, and this is what love looks like for me here. And then poems that were about the feeling of either being betrayed by myself or observing people in relationships through conversations, through things that you would just see and wonder about, like, because sometimes I think there's some usefulness in using the imagination as a safe playground for possibility, right? Like, if I use my imagination, I don't necessarily have to fully experience some things. I can say, okay, I want to imagine myself in the best version of who I could show up as, for example. And before it plays out, I can allow myself the experience of what that could look like, so I can, you know, play around with the sort of my own personal virtual reality of that experience, right? Preempt the strike kind of thing. Um, and so some of the poems are not necessarily personal experiences, but a lot of it is infused with either things I've truly felt or experienced. Um, it's like I'll read an example. That's all right.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
The not forgetting. I'm not forgetting, and the loving is hard. The loving is hard, and I can't bite through it. I can just lay on it or be crushed beneath it, shattered teeth it. I'm not forgetting. I am eating memories. I am a glutton and it's giving me gas. I'm stinking from the loving and saying, pardon me. I'm asking forgiveness for what comes of the love. Pardon me. I am swinging off midnight gates and landing on the chest. I knock there. Won't be let in. Stands guard with the sword. He does. He smiles. My mind is midnight snacking on the memory of his eyes, his smile, black and mild. I am screaming my love between bites and leaving holes in my phone. So,
Wow.
you know, there are poems like that. Um, and then there are poems that are more I guess yeah, more of love scene-esque, romantic. I think I'm a fan a little bit of a rom-com, on occasion. So the idea of the romance and that sort of thing,
Right.
in traditional ways, but spoken about in like a more modern day sort of way.
Right.
Um, this one is Traffic Light. We sat through the green, yellow, red, green, yellow, red. We sat through the going, the slowing, the stops. We talked. We spoke to one another through the waiting and the stopping. We spoke to one another and were existing together in the midst of every stage of movement. We were slowing, stopping, greening, meaning we were moving forward. toward the best, most exciting places. We were placing our faces against our own hands, trying to hide the dents left in our cheeks from how happy had crashed carelessly into us. Yeah.
Feeling that completely, like totally, like that is hitting for sure.
Thank you.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Do you feel there's certain subjects that you write about more than others, or do you feel like you just write whatever comes to your mind and heart?
I would say at this stage of my life, I have gotten a lot more experimental in what my writing does, right? So I think there was a point at which I could say majority of my writing, and I think to some degree it still is largely topics and themes around love and freedom, um, and the idea of self-exploration and growth. I think those things have always been very primary in my mind. Um, I think, you know, in terms of freedom, at a young age, I went to see Serafina on Broadway, and it was shifting for my life at that time. It was very transformative in the way that I saw the world, because I was not aware that such an oppression existed, that people would hate each other enough just based off skin to decide that you don't get to have a full and beautiful life. Um, and I didn't know that existed that way, you know. And so being in a space where, on a stage where, yes, this is acting and all of that, but this wasn't, you know, you could feel in the song that this was from someplace very personal, that the students who were performing this had lived some part of this experience and known and were coming in protest of what was going on, and they were protesting with their art. You see what I'm saying? And so
Right.
sometimes my art is protest. Sometimes my art is for healing, because I need it. I need the people around me to have that. Because I think, you know, when you feel um empathetic in heavy ways, you can really need people to be okay, because when I'm around you, I'm feeling what you're feeling. I need you to be okay, you know, and not as pressure, but as like, I think the world would just be better if we could get closer to that healed, right? And it's a constant process, but I want the writing to do something. Sometimes I want the writing to just allow me to observe beauty in nature, and because it really fascinates me like that. You know, I was telling my sister the other day, I was in coming from a vending event, and I saw a tree, and I was like, it's about to happen. I'm gonna hug you. It's gonna happen. And I did. I just, you know, put out an arm and say, you know, this is hello,
Right.
you know, and it
Right.
felt amazing. And then, you know, I was reading something that said something about how, like, legitimately when your bare feet touch grass, or when like you experience certain things in nature, it really does something chemically to how you function,
Right.
right? And so it's not just this like imagined thing. It's like there is something real to just allowing yourself quiet stillness in nature. So I write in those places. I go to those places to experience that. Sometimes I will experiment with what my pen can do, right? So like more recently, I've been watching some of like documentaries. I'd watched a Miles Davis documentary, and as I was watching it, I was just like going through so many different feelings about this story, you know, of like this artist who was evolving in these ways and was impacted in these ways that maybe his life would have looked completely different if he lived in a different sort of world, right? Where it's like a moment could shift his whole trajectory of life that like had nothing fully to do with anything he'd done or who he was, other than, you know, how he showed up in the world by birth, you
Right.
know. And so things like that. And so as I watched, I would write and see what would happen. So it was like my own, like, I would give myself prompts, you know, to say like, I want to just explore this. I want to explore what I'm feeling while I'm watching this. um so yeah, I hope I answered that, because I know I said a lot of things.
No, you know what? That's definitely what the last couple of things you mentioned were totally on point, because that was the perfect segue to my next question,
Okay,
which
great.
is and which is concerning representation,
Mm,
right? You've heard the word representation thrown around in different circles and what
mm,
have you. When it comes to
Yeah.
you as a person and your writing, how important is it to you to make sure that you're representing yourself completely through your writing? You know, whether it's regarding your sexuality, your race, religion, education,
Mhm.
religion if it applies to you,
Right.
your ethnicity, your background, your education,
Mm,
all of those things combined. How important is it to
right.
you to make sure that you're representing yourself through your words?
It's the whole point. It's the whole point because it's like I write to know myself, right? I write to know myself before I write it for other people. Honestly, even when there's a writing prompt, I'm writing to understand first the existence, like being here. And so the fullness of being here is about who you are, right? I am that I am. The most divine thing you can ever do is to exist, be as you are, right? And so that idea, I think reverberates in my work, especially now because it has not always been easy, I think, or it has shifted in its easiness. It's fluctuated, it's had its ups and downs of ease to express the full self. Because like I'm this I guess the ambivert of sorts, right? Where there's part of me that's very like, I'm here, woohoo. And then there's part of me that's like, okay, that's enough time together. Everybody go away. Let me go
Right.
to my room. I don't want to, see anyone for a day or two. I need a moment. Like, I'm that way. And so I think that in that space of existence, even in my poetry, there are times when I don't say I say she, or else, you know what I mean? And sometimes it is because it's not me. Sometimes it's because I don't want to associate myself with the person in that poem, the speaker of that poem. And to be clear, when we're writing as poets, technically, right, we can't assume that the person writing is also the character or speaker of the poem, right?
Right, right,
Um, so there is that freedom then to jump in and out of reality where I can say a thing and I can explore a feeling, and it doesn't have to be me. I can disassociate for a moment with that feeling, or I can embrace it. And I think the writing really reflects the journey of what that looks like. You can see some places where it's like there's a full embracing of sexuality, which is a brave thing for me growing up in a space where like you didn't say things about that. You didn't talk about relations.
right,
Like
right,
I couldn't even say certain words till I was very, very grown because it was like that ingrained in my growing up.
right,
And so that's also why that book took such a long time to come out, because it was like there are explorations of all kinds of facets of being, and it's very vulnerable,
right,
and it required a sort of nakedness, right, to do that. It required saying like, I'm going to take off this feeling that I have to show up just so it's like,
right,
no. I am many things, and it was like that can be conflicting, because in a world where they want you to check a box, pick a place to be, decide who you are, and then don't move, right? Because
right,
that you've changed is an insult, right?
right,
Why? Right? Because if we're not evolving, are we even alive, right?
right,
um
exactly.
so it's like, of course we've changed. That should be a compliment. But when you live in a space where people need to be able to hold you to a story, hold you to a narrative, that can be a very challenging space, right? To embrace all of the parts of you and to be willing to share it out loud outside of yourself,
Right,
especially if you can be a very private person, but also be very public. It's this like seesaw, and you're trying to, you deal with
right,
the imposter syndrome because you're like, I'm showing up this way here, but I also am this person. I can be very happy, but I can also be very down. I could be, I can be the roller coaster. I'm not just taking it, sometimes I
right,
am it. Right. And so it's like, what do you do with that? And the poetry allows me to figure that out. It allows me to figure it out, and it allows me to share things that people can say, yo, thank you, because I needed that, or I heard you when you said that. And that feeling, I write more boldly, I think, and more raw over time because of understanding that I had a moment in life when I thought, I wish somebody could just tell me what to do here, right? I wish somebody would just give me the instructions for how you do this part
Right.
when it's hard, when it's challenging, when things didn't go the way you planned it, right? And I thought about how, like, Toni Morrison had said this, rest in power to her, that she wrote what she wanted to read, right? She wrote what she wanted to read. And so it was like, there are going to be texts out there that you can read and it will touch you in such a way that it will help you. It'll shift your trajectory of thought. You might read one quote and it could change your whole year because, right, inspiration, or because better understanding or whatever, right? And if somebody doesn't do that for you, what if you did that for yourself?
Right.
Because you wrote it and you wrote yourself out of the thing. You declared yourself freer. You declared yourself love. You declared yourself light. You declared yourself, you know, thickly delicious. You declared yourself all of what you are, and you claimed it proudly, and you didn't keep holding on to the shame of needing to be one way, one thing, some limited story. You
Right.
decided instead to like break out of all of that and say it's gonna look real rebellious in a second because I'm about to be whatever I want in real life. You
Yes.
know, yeah.
That's what's up. That's
Yeah.
totally 100% what's up point, because that provides the perfect segue
Mhm.
for you to take the mic. Now, you've
Ooh,
already shared a couple of dope, powerful hitting poems. So
yeah.
at this time, I want to give you space to share, about 3 more poems, just to
Okay.
continue to give our audience an idea of your poetic musings. And without further ado, the floor is yours.
Beautiful. I have 2 pieces I want to share that are new-ish that began as a writing prompt response at outside in a mental wellness experience. And here we go. I go outside to where the beaches are, to where the sun says something soft, something gentle. I go to where my toes touch some sand. I feel the vibrations in my shoulders here. I know the gentle kiss of the ocean's lips. The air smells of salt and the journey forward. When finding land and love is the way, water will touch us in waves. When the sun says it's okay here, I long for this place where birds cry a song that says me free. Down by the seaside, down by the sea, imagine the clouds will come to some sensational formation and make kingdoms I can live inside for a while. I am allowed here. I am allowed. The sand is hot, but does not burn the feet. The waves are not afraid to change their mind or feel their flow. And me too. Me too. And that's that first piece. The second piece, we go back inside. I am love and worthy of it. I am love and worthy of it. I walked down some path one day and saw something waiting, and it was everything stacked high and piled low. And there was a dusty wedding gown waiting on a new ending and a new sound, waiting and wanting somewhere to say, even here, you were worthy. Even when it seemed nothing was working, you've been worthy. And the boxes with albums sit somewhere in the amygdala and somewhere in the cerebral. Maybe I must relearn the mind sometimes inside. Inside, there are flowers. I bring in fresh from the garden of past mistakes. But the BS was fertilizer after all, and the dreams weren't false, and the lady was a lion, fierce, mane still holding on. She be queen and king when she leans into all parts of her being. When the sound comes served in bowls, I am grateful here. When the sound comes served in bowls full of something my mind will not ever forget, I cried over the sink inside. But I did not die. I did not die. I lived, and I swear it was the most aggressive thing I did today, the most warring when I knew. I went inside and wish Shaka Zulu was sweet as apple chai or spice, like ginger or spiced like life. I still choose to taste this next try. That's that piece. And this last piece I want to dedicate to everybody out there and remind you to love yourself well and feel your best free. Just give me the light. Just give me the light. Lights low, offering up an amber aura in the living room, letting there be lights, keeping the atmosphere appropriate for creation. Let there be light. Wait till the night has nothing more to do than let you be with you and your thoughts, and the couch you deem throne that you might be properly propped for your crowning achievements. Let there be incense to offer up sensual scent and smoke to pair with elevation. It's a groove. It's to move away from the fast-paced list of things to do and places to be. It's a chance to dance your gel ink across pages that have always been your safest spaces. It's a rhythm. The beat matches life song, matches the humming that happens when you take heart. The beat be breaking barriers around the brain and letting thought flow free. Mental soliloquy. It's a rhythm that rights the wrongs of the weak and puts strong hands to tense places and opens up a space for wings to grow. When you're ready for them here, where candlelight provides enough fire to ignite an internal review on how you are. Lets you be the star of your concerns, and congratulations on sometimes being the bright of the best constellations. You be a compilation of light and love. Here, you remember who you are and what this is. It's a groove. Stretch before you break into your newest move. Stretch. Growth begins with the stretching of muscle and mind, so stretch. Flexibility makes for less fear. Stretch. And find yourself unfractured by the festivities, because it's a groove, it's a vibe, it's what victory feels like when you put the pieces of you back together again. And the bass from your deepest self booms, and the soprano of your soul breaks glass ceilings, and you find yourself flowing out of glasses half full into spaces once empty. Reciprocity be the rhythm, gratitude be the groove, life be the stage, you be the creator, set the script on the page. Here you remember to act accordingly. Thank you.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the absolutely positively lit poetics of Mwikali words. Mwikali, thank you so much for sharing that awesome poetry. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Definitely on point.
Thank
Now,
you.
for these next few minutes, I
Mhm.
want to share my screen again because I want to take a few more moments for our Q&A session.
Yeah.
Now, one question I want to ask
Mhm.
is, if you could collaborate with any poet, whether living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Mm, that is interesting. That's a great question. Oh, that's challenging. But you know what? I feel like I would love to get an opportunity to collaborate with Sonny Patterson because I remember hearing her spit on Def Poetry Jam, and it was like she rocked my whole soul. You know, the rhythm of her speech, the power of her content, the history and the like ancestral infusion of some kind of beautiful New Orleans magic, you know, like yeah, I have big poetry love for Sonny Patterson. That would be amazing. Yes.
That's what's up. That's
Yes.
what's up.
Yes.
Now you know how now most businesses or companies have a the quote unquote mission statement. Now, what would be your mission statement? Like what do you hope to accomplish with your work?
Mm, I hope to help people believe in something bigger. Um, I being a person of dreams and dreaming a world better, because the feeling is that everything starts in the mind, right? As above, so below. My desire is to help people to transform their minds so that they can transform their lives, you know, to be able to say, I wrote this and you saw yourself, or you saw somebody you love that now you have a better understanding of what might have been going on in their head, or you know, you read what I said, or you heard my words and you were inspired to go be more and be better and be freer and be strange and unique as you want to be. And like I want people to just believe in the best versions of themselves. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to be free, like to be free to explore it and to mess up and be fully human and it's okay. And it's gonna be okay. Like I want to give that to people because that's what I want, you know, do unto others vibes. Like golden rule that thing, you know?
Yes, that's what's
Yeah.
up. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any events or projects coming up that you'd like to share with our audience?
I do. So on the 7th, I'm gonna be not the 7th, the 21st, this Saturday. I'm going to be both vending as well as sharing some poetry at the Daydream Festival in Tuckerton, New Jersey. This is in collaboration with the Soup Can Magazine, Chris Rockwell, the team, and they're raising funds for a great cause for research, excuse me, for cancer research. And it's going to be a good time. There's going to be music and poetry and art and all kinds of good times. So I'm looking forward to that coming up soon. uh what else do we have beyond that? There are a couple of projects that are lined up for sure. In terms of some writing projects, on the 18th of June, there is a writer's retreat out in Willingsboro, New Jersey, in collaboration with James Ellerby and Amira Shabazz. I will be leading a writing workshop out in this gorgeous, gorgeous park. So if you haven't gotten tickets, please definitely check out my page or James Ellerby or Amira Shabazz. We're gonna have a great time writing, getting some grub on, and getting to share out open mic and get a little hiking going if you want to take a little walk. So it's gonna be a lovely little layout of a day. So you don't want to miss it if you like that sort of thing. It's definitely a good vibe. I can't wait for that. And That's it, I think, but a lot has been going on, so I may be missing some things, but follow me on IG at Kali Wordbird or at Mwikali Words, and you'll see in the link in my bio, I'll be posting some updates for some upcoming things as well, so that if I did miss some things, we'll definitely have that covered there.
Awesome, awesome. That's what's up. That's what's up. So as we close, just want to do one more thing. And that is, I want to say thank you. First of all, thank you. Mwikali Words, thank you. Great conversation and poetry on point. I
Thank
mean,
you.
I think I felt every emotion in the spectrum because your poetry was that hitting. I mean, awesome work, awesome words. I thoroughly enjoyed your poetry, and I'm sure our audience did. Thank you so much for coming through. Really enjoyed your work.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Now, for those of you that wish to follow Poets with Purpose and the P.W.P sessions, you can connect with the Facebook group Poets with Purpose. You can also follow on Twitter at @PoetsWPurpose, YouTube channel of the same name. And you can also connect with me on Clubhouse at @The Anointed Pen. And I know I've been delaying doing stuff on Clubhouse, but I'm cooking up some good stuff. So stay tuned for my Clubhouse debut. Stay tuned, y'all, for episodes 32 and 33. I got a double feature coming up on June 4th, Saturday, June 4th. First episode, episode 32, will be on Saturday, June 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be interviewing poet and author Elaine Sexton. Then immediately after that, at 8 o'clock on the same date, June 4th, I'll be interviewing poet and MC AC Lightning. So y'all don't want to miss these. I'm sure you're in for some awesome conversations and poetry as well for these next episodes. For more information, you can call me at 646-372-6230 or email me at poetswithpurpose@gmail.com. I want to shout out to Eclipse Graphics New York. They design all of my flyers and logos. They do awesome work. You can connect with them on Instagram at @Eclipse Graphics NY. You can see samples of their work there and connect with them as well through Instagram if you would like for them to do any work for yourself. And lastly, for those of you that would like to make a donation, you can do so through PayPal, Tap Media Man, Cash App, $Anointed Pen, or through Zelly using my phone number, 646-372-6230. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for episode 31. This episode will be uploaded to the YouTube channel within the next hour or so, so be on the lookout for that to share among your social media networks. Thank you, Mwikali. Thank you to my audience. This was, once again, a great episode, great conversation, and great poetry. I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Have a good night and God bless. Thank you.
Good night.